What's up, guys? Welcome back to another Game Time Discussions. I'm Cameron Selby, and we're going to be going through our 2025 playoff regression rankings. If you're new to this concept, what it is we take the 14 teams that made the playoffs in the previous year, and we rank them based on how we view them and their ability to make the postseason the following year. This isn't a power ranking of how we think this team will be better than this team. This is just, hey, how can you go from this past year's playoffs and return to the postseason the following year? Usually there's about 4 to 5 teams every single year that miss the postseason. Right now, there's only one team of the 14 that are plus money to make the postseason. So a lot of favorites. There's going to be some incorrect answers. There's going to be some people on the outside looking in, and we're going to try to dissect and divert between the 14 and see what we view as the teams that are on the bubble of making the postseason this year. So I say let's get right into the episode. Let's get right into it. So kicking it off, we're going to start with the Steelers, the most obvious team, the only team, like I mentioned, plus money to make the postseason this year. They're just a team that has made a bunch of contradictory moves, very un-Steeler-like that we've been noticing. They've, haven't won a playoff game in nearly a decade now, and right now they're just kind of making a lot of moves that they're all in, and it doesn't feel like they're that close. Last year, we were wrong about them making the postseason, but we did state, hey, they have to have the perfect 7-2 or better S start because the end of the season was brutal. And that's exactly what happened. They started out really, really strong and then lost 4 straight to end the season, and then obviously lost and wasn't really a competitive wild card round. But then this year, they let both quarterbacks walk that were a part of that team, bringing a 40-year-old that led one of the most disappointing teams of the 2024 season with Rodgers and the Jets. In a very similar instance of, hey, Jets had a top 5 defense, and they have serviceable weapons to, at least score 18 to 20 points. One would think that's just going to by default fall into 8 to 10 wins. I made the mistake of even picking them to win the AFC East last year, and it did not pan out for anybody that believed in them. But they recently just traded away an All-Pro and Minka Fitzpatrick for Jalen Ramsey, who is still good, but obviously past his prime now. And then Johnny Smith, the journeyman tight end. So a lot of just back and forth. TJ Watt, are you going to extend him? It seems like they're far apart. There's awkward talks and stuff like that. I would anticipate he would be staying, but I mean, anything can happen at this point in time. So if he were to stay, obviously their top 5 defense, you would think that with the weapons that they have, even though it doesn't really, DK trading for him, extending him like they did, doesn't really fit their offense, but it's at least enough of that. Roman Wilson, a couple of tight ends, Calvin Austin, and then a pair of running backs with Caleb Johnson and Jalen Warren. It's enough to have 18 to 20 points, which, should inherit 7 to 10 wins. So they're going to be right in the thick of things. I don't think anybody, even if they do make the postseason, would pick them to win a game because it'll likely be on the road against one of the Bills or the Ravens or the Chiefs or whoever is hosting them in January. But at the same time, this is a video to see who's going to make the postseason, and anything can happen. Mike Tomlin's never had a losing season, so maybe it's still their year to where they're still possibly in the playoffs. But for now, we're going to keep them at the bottom. Meanwhile, the Houston Texans is very interesting because they are by far the weakest division in the AFC. They're minus 110 actually as a pick 'em to win the division, but we just honestly did not like their offseason. They traded away multiple offensive linemen. It's patchwork. It is by far the worst unit in football right now. And when you have the worst unit of a position that is as important as an offensive line, it's really hard to have confidence in a team to repeat some kind of success. It feels like another season where they're just kind of 8-9, 9-8, 10-7 on a good day. And I mean, that's kind of showing in the odds. Their win total has fallen down to plus 100 to be over 9.5 wins. So their Vegas is kind of leaning towards this is a 9-8 or worse ball club. And honestly, I can't tell you who the truest contender is. I say that they can all beat up on each other and everybody's within 7 to 9 wins, and who just has the best luck of the draw against the divisional opponents, I think, is what it comes down to. But everybody's capable of knocking them off. And so that's why it makes me a little bit nervous that Houston may or may not be back where you think. I wouldn't anticipate two teams coming from this division. So if it is only one and it's not Houston, they might be on the outside looking in. But then jumping over to 12 and 11, these teams kind of, they had to be on the same slide. Obviously, you read the title, week 18, win or go home? Question mark. I mean, they are playing the final week of the season, and they are just eerily similar in terms of their expectation this year. Obviously, Minnesota coming off one of the biggest surprise seasons of the year last year, nearly being the 1 seed, losing the final week of the season to be 14-3 as a 5 seed, and then obviously losing their home or their first round playoff game on the road against the Rams. But here's the deal. That was a little bit of a mirage, and obviously we should expect regression from them. But it's not like they got worse this offseason. I mean, they let Sam Darnold walk, and then they're replacing him with J.J. McCarthy, who they took in the first round of last year's draft. Obviously, no playing time. But it's not like Sam Darnold is the sole reason to be 14-3, and losing him just makes you all of a sudden a below 500 ball club. On top of that, they made strides offensive line and defensive line, similar to what Chicago did and what we've been praising all offseason with the moves that they've made there. They're well coached on both sides of the ball, and I would expect them to be right in the thick of things. They're just kind of another team that might be a little slept on, and you don't really expect them to make the postseason, but they just kind of find a way in. Does that mean that they can make a run and possibly vie for an NFC title appearance similar to what Washington did this year? I would say probably not. However, to make the postseason, that's kind of what it's got to be about. They are in front of Green Bay mainly because I don't really know what Green Bay is great at. They're just kind of fine everywhere. Just kind of name me their top 5 players. I mean, they have a couple of guys that are really strong. It's just kind of a mesh receiving core. Run game is really good with Josh Jacobs, but if he goes down, it's just Marshawn Lloyd, who barely got run, and then a bunch of Jags. And Jordan Love really kind of took a step back last year. Obviously, that had a little bit to do with the receiver injuries on top of his own. You would expect him to be back healthy, but let's not just assume that he's just going to become instantly a top 10 quarterback, and that's exactly where he was trending towards. He had a hell of a finish to the 2023 season, and that really led into a playoff blowout of Dallas, and we thought more was to come, and it just kind of felt a little lateral moves, and this year it just kind of feels like they kind of maintained their skill, and they made the postseason last year as a 7th seed, and that's just kind of where I see them as. They're like right in the hunt of being the last team in. Both of these teams are, and at the end of the day, it could really come down to that final matchup of whoever wins is going to be the team that gets in, and whoever doesn't is probably out on the outside looking in. Or maybe that's, hey, one team's already out and they upset and knock both of them out. I mean, we can't just assume that it's going to be 3 teams once again in the postseason from the same division for the second year in a row. On top of that, with Chicago also improving. On top of that, look at them. They both have identical strength of schedules that are pretty tough. So it's all one of those things where, they're going to be right there, but I wouldn't expect both. And possibly they beat each other up so much that maybe they both don't get it. So jumping over, there's a trio of teams. There's 2 in the same division, similar to what we had with the last one. And then also Tampa Bay is ranked above them, not because they are more talented. We actually think that they're slightly below both of these teams. However, they have the path of least resistance, being in the easiest division in football. It's usually been, there's only one team going, and it's been the Bucs. Even after Tom Brady retired, Baker stepped up and just kind of led them to back-to-back divisional wins. Last year, they did really well. Year before, they did really well. And it's kind of feel like it's going to be more of the same. They're right now a 9 to 10 win ball club. And unless somebody else from the division takes a massive step up, and you have to rely on a Bryce Young, who has had a so-so start to his career after being drafted to Carolina. The Saints have taken a massive step back. I don't expect them to really even be in contention. And then Atlanta, yeah, they're fine. They have some holes, but at the same time, you're relying on Michael Penix, who is in his first year as a starter. So it's really just, hey, up the quarterback groupings for each division there is by far the biggest gap between first and second in this division, maybe than any other division in football. And that kind of correlates with why Tampa Bay has been able to stay up top. So as long as there's only one going in, and it is Tampa, they're probably going to feel pretty good about where they're at. And then with Denver and the Chargers, man, we really do like their rosters. Really close strength of schedules. They're both basically 9 or 10 win teams. They are kind of the fighting for second as a vibe in the AFC West with Kansas City, unless who will also be on this list. But again, this was a 3-team division to make the postseason, and it's hard to predict that multiple years in a row for 3 teams in the same division to make it. There's a reason that Justin Herbert is the thumbnail on this slide. It's because he has the most to prove by far between any other player of these 3 teams, because we saw an elite season in his first year with Jim Harbaugh, and then just instantly shits the bed in the postseason. Has more interceptions in one game than he did the entire season. Obviously, that's a narrative that is going to follow him the entire season. They just kind of are really, really strong on both sides of the ball. They will probably make the postseason. Maybe they will, maybe they won't, but they need to get over the hump. And is he the guy to do that, or are they going to maybe have him prematurely leaving earlier than we would intend him to prior to his extension, or after his extension? And I just don't know. With Denver, was it a mirage? They were the biggest surprise last year, or one of it, if it weren't for Washington making it to the Final Four. But their roster's just really, really good. They have no holes, and they're starting to become elite in certain spots, especially in the secondary. Their pass rush is one of the most underrated in football. They made a lot of adjustments and brought in some vets on the defensive side. Offensive line, I think, graded out a second in the league this past season. Bo Nix, I wouldn't expect him to just continue to make a massive stride, but even if he does just kind of replicate the same kind of really good numbers, I mean, they're going to be right there again. And I don't really know if either team is capable of knocking off Kansas City with the Mahomes healthy. But at the same time, this is just to get in the postseason. I think if I'm like, hey, who's more likely to win a postseason game, it might be Denver. But at the same time, they're just kind of both going to be there. Anticipate. I feel very good about saying that probably both make it. But at the same time, I wouldn't be shocked if either did not. So they're there, but they're just going to be one of the teams that are going to be in thorns in people's sides all year long. And I'm excited to watch both teams play. The next two, this was a matchup in the divisional round, but just was last year an outlier? Is there more to come from the results that they had last year? So kind of different reasons, but Detroit obviously came in as one of the favorites in 2024, and they played like it. They were in first place of the NFC basically the entire season. And it just kind of came down to they ran out of bodies. And there was no harm, no foul. They did lose as a 10-point favorite against Washington at home. But again, they just lost so many bodies. And it just is what it is. Washington just kind of was the better, healthier team at the very end. And that's just kind of what it came down to. But at the same time, it's a little bit different now because with Washington, there's expectation now. We said earlier that they were the biggest surprise last year. Well, now everybody has the target on you as the runner-up of the NFC, and you're thrusted into the prime time a little bit more. You're going to have more prime time games. More teams are going to be playing their best against you because they're going to be trying to take those tiebreakers away. And with that said, they're a really, really good team. But at the same time, who knows with this division, because it is wide open. It always has been for the last 20 years, even with Philly being the favorite and the defending champs. They could win the division or they could disappoint and be third. There is a wider range of outcomes a little bit with this team, but at the same time, we can expect them to just at least be much more competitive on a consistent basis than we've seen in many, many years prior with this franchise. With Detroit, they lost a lot of coordinators, man. And on top of that, they're not going to be able to be in dome games and great weather environments against, inferior teams a ton like they were last year. At the end of the day, you play who you play, but at the same time, we can't just marinate, hey, 15-2 instantly just, okay, well, it's going to be 13-4 this time. And that's what the odds are showing. They're plus money to be over 10 wins. And for a team that won 15 games to not be one of the bigger win totals, it's not necessarily a surprise, but you shouldn't just kind of have those expectations. So I do expect them to take a step back. It's not like they made moves to get better. They just kind of made stationary moves, but they had bigger coaching changes than any other team with everybody that left from the assistant wise. So we're going to find out how good David Campbell is. And on top of that, with the division being just as good, Chicago closing the door a little bit, it's just deadlocked to where this entire division can be within 8 and 10 wins, and they could be, on the outside looking in if they're not playing well in the cold, or Jared Goff goes down, or maybe their line suffers a little bit more in play, because that's kind of been the driving force of this team for 2 years. So very, very interesting to see what happens. I feel good about both teams making the playoffs, but even with Detroit being minus 200 to win the division, I do not consider that a good bet whatsoever. So we'll just kind of see what it is, but they're basically fringe contenders that, hey, do they stay that way, or are they, a little bit of pretending in their regimen? And then we jump over to 3 teams that we consider playoff locks. And it's really no secret with these 3. Very easy to paint the path for all of them. I'm very shocked with the Rams. I think they deserve to be on this slide. One, they're not even favored to win the division, which I thought was shocking because they are a much more talented team than the 49ers at this point. 49ers, the only thing they have going for them is one of the easiest schedules that you can think of. But the Rams are just really good everywhere. They really revamped their defense since losing Aaron Donald. They got younger, faster, stronger, harder, and they're just a bunch of just dogs on that side of the ball. And then you're replacing an older, aging Cooper Kupp that really aged out quickly for Devontae Adams, who I know he's aging also, but at the same time, we saw him in the second, in the fantasy postseason, so to say, have a 200-yard half in the final couple weeks of the season. So he still has talent, and it is still a massive upgrade over Cooper Kupp. Kyron Williams, the ball still goes through him. Offensive line, they re-signed who they needed to, and is still an above-average unit. Matthew Stafford's still that guy. Sean McVay's still that guy. And they still got Puka Nacua. So they're going to be in the playoffs. Minus 180 feels too low. They're one of the best bets, I would say, to even win their respective division, because they're plus 180 if I remember correctly. But I feel very, very comfortable putting them into the postseason somewhere, shape, or form. Buffalo, Baltimore, 2 teams that are just going to be right next to each other, and who's going to be the team that can knock off Kansas City on their own without help. And both teams have had a crack at it. Both teams have kind of not taken advantage of that fact. I mean, it's really hard to decipher between these 2 teams. They're both really good. They're both 11.5 win totals, tied for the most in the NFL. But Buffalo, the main difference and why they are 3 and not 4 is just because they're in the AFC East. And really, the AFC East to me comes down to, can New England shock the world? And if not, it's Buffalo's division. With Baltimore, at least, Pittsburgh, they always, played 500 against them typically, have been upset against them in recent years, even with bad quarterback play. Cincinnati always gives them a tough game, but the last year they swept Cincinnati on 2 just down to the wire games that the ball bounced their way both times. So maybe it doesn't do that this year. Cleveland, I believe they lost to them last year. So even if Cleveland's bad, they're still, frisky, so to speak. So much tougher division. Only reason that they're below that. On top of that, they're going to be playing each other again. They'll probably play in the postseason. And again, this is just to make the playoffs. This isn't who has the best chance to win the entire AFC. But Buffalo, it would be shocking if they were to miss the postseason based on where they're at, what division they're in. And with Baltimore, they're feel pretty good about it. I mean, they're minus 600 and 750 respectively. They're going to be there. And there's not much more to say about it. And finally, final slide, it's pretty obvious. It's the 2 teams that met in the Super Bowl for the second time in 3 years. Philly, Kansas City. Don't be shocked that Philly is not number 1. The reason that they're not number 1 is because Kansas City, they haven't really replicated that consistent success. The last couple attempts that they've gone to the Super Bowl, the following year, they've either missed a postseason, they've fallen apart. Remember last or 2 years ago after they appeared and were runners up. They started out 10-0 and then lost like 5 of 7 to end the season, and then were blown out in the postseason. So it's just kind of one of those things where they started off too well to collapse, but they just had a really, really bad second act. They've had 500 seasons after big postseason runs before. So I want to see them have multiple postseason success. On top of that, they're the team that is second in their division with the team that made it to the conference championship with them. So them Giants at least got better enough to where they're going to be, the Giants at least got better enough to where they're going to be, formidable as a opponent on a week-to-week basis. They probably won't win enough games to be the postseason, but they can knock you off to where, hey, you're either on the outside looking in, or you could be, fighting with teams that you probably shouldn't be fighting with because you're not taking care of the games you're supposed to. Dallas, say what you want to say. Dak, when healthy, has had Philly's number in the past when he's been healthy, but when he's not, obviously Philly is taking care of business. Dallas also, this is one of their worst team in expectations in recent years, so people are writing them off. So am I, even as a Cowboys fan. But that doesn't mean the Cowboys can't upset them or split the season series. And all it takes is just a couple of games to where Philly just kind of is cruising right along. Last year, there was a 10-win team in the NFC that missed the postseason with Seattle. So it's not a lot to just, hey, win 10 games and you're for sure in, or even win this division. We have not had a repeat winner since 2004. That was 22 years ago, or 22 seasons ago. So, I mean, that's the main tiebreaker. Kansas City, we have never not seen Patrick Mahomes in the conference title game. So it's hard to imagine somebody who has had that consistent success, if he is healthy, to not be in the postseason. Go from Final Four every single year to just not making it at all. That is the reason they're number one and Philly is number two. Is just Philly. Much tougher schedule. On top of that, Target is on their back. On top of that, we've seen the sample size of them kind of falling off a little bit the second year, following a big run. So you just never know with those things. They're probably both going to make it. I mean, minus 475 and minus 450. But it is telling that both of those are worse odds than the 3 and 4, which is Baltimore and Buffalo. So it's not the end all be all. They're both plus money to even win more than 11 and a half games. So with that said, they're probably going to be there. We're going to give the nod to Kansas City, respect them, their longevity, and just knowing that Mahomes is going to be in the postseason every year that he is healthy until further notice, or at least win match made with Andy Reid. Philly, pretty good bet. They're on paper the best team in football, but we've seen them disappoint before when they have had we've seen them disappoint before when they've had that expectation. So that's where we're at with those two teams. But with that said, guys, that's all I got for you. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Please leave a like. Let us know what you think. Give us some of your vibes of these postseason teams and how likely some of these are going to be either making or missing. Again, 4 to 5 teams every single year are new into the postseason. We see worst to first teams all the time. We did that video last week if you want to take that, give that a look. But yeah, we just want to let you know what you think. We're going to be live streaming every single week on Thursday nights as we are getting closer and closer to the season. We're 60 days as of today of the season starting. It's really, really exciting. We're getting so close. I can almost taste it. But that just means we're going to be ramping up content. So be sure to let us know how you feel, what your thoughts are, some of your bold takes. We're going to be doing a whole lot of fun stuff. And we're excited to interact with you guys. But until then, we will see you guys next time.